after the moment of silence, stick around because I'm going to tell a little bit about what y'all have done. So if you would, please rise for the pledge, followed by a moment of silence.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all. Y'all four stay up here a minute. I want to congratulate this group. They're in their fourth season. I guess you guys aren't in your fourth season, but the program's in its fourth season at Mount Pleasant Middle. They have competed in several tournaments, robotics tournaments across the Middle Tennessee area. Marked fifth in the well, I don't know what that means. Some of those words are missing, I think. But anyway, they have accomplished an awful lot in their 4 years as a program. This year's team members earned 2 qualifications for the Tennessee VEX Championship, which is a robotics company-sponsored tournament, bringing home a Build Award, a Design Award, and an Excellence Award, which is the highest award given at the competition. So we want to thank, and some of them aren't here, but Jet, Maximo, Elijah, Baylor, Christian, and Hunter. Those are our Mount Pleasant Middle School team, and let's give them a round of applause. All right. Thank you guys for being great representatives of our district and for leading us in our pledge tonight. Thank you very much. This time I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda from Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Hooper, who I appreciate his stylist's great work this afternoon picking out his wardrobe. Any comments on the agenda? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All right, we have approval of our agenda for the evening. The next item on our agenda was going to be time to offer thanks and appreciation to the Shaq Mason Foundation and obviously Shaq Mason himself. He had an emergency or unexpected event come up this afternoon and is not going to be able to be here to this evening. We will definitely try to reschedule, but I just want to publicly take the time to thank him for all the work he's done over the years on behalf of our students, not only at Christmas, but all the times throughout the year, whether we see it or whether we don't. I know he's been very involved and very active and is a great ambassador for our school system to the community at large. So thank you, and we'll get him rescheduled for the appreciation. The next up is our Murray Smiles Awards, and I'm going to kind of turn that over to Jack or Miss Ventura because she's got all the information.
So as most of you are aware, we were trying to highlight the great things that are happening in Murray County Public Schools and really had asked for nominees from all of our school-level staff to nominate whoever they thought was deserving of a Murray Smiles, and we've recognized them throughout the year throughout board meetings. And Beck Dental is a wonderful partner to Murray County Public Schools. They have donated I believe it's an electric toothbrush and whitening system for the grand prize winner. So all of the former Murray Smiles recipients are in this little baggie, and I'm going to ask my boss man to draw a name. The winner is Cole Seagraves who was honored for his work in CHS broadcasting. Is Cole Seagraves here? All right, well, we will make sure that Cole receives this, and we appreciate all the other winners that are here or that are watching us from home.
Thank you, and a special thanks to Beck Dental for their support and their encouragement of our students, staff, and board members over the year. At this time, we're going to move to our public delegations. We have one that has signed up previous to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, but they did make the appropriate request. And then also, I have Trevor Pennington to discuss some ideas on the 5-year capital. Is that correct? I have you right? Okay. I'll have you come up after this presentation right now. But at this time, I'd like to ask Grace Carter and Lucy Grams to come up and share their ideas and thoughts. And I will remind the board that this is not an interactive go back and forth type thing. Just enjoy listening to them.
Hello, my name is Grace Carter, and this is my partner Lucy Grams, and we are here as the Period Poverty Project. Now, we do have packets for all of you that we are going to hand out, if that's okay? Okay. Thank you. So, we come here today to ask you to continuously fund the 5 feminine product dispensers that we have already purchased for CHS. In fact, they have arrived and they are waiting to be installed in the teacher workroom. Alone, we have raised over $12,000 to both buy the initial dispensers and the products. However, we estimate that this will only stock the dispensers with products for 3 to 4 years. After that, we will need the support of the school board. We have already created a budget and chosen a business that will both supply the products and the dispensers. The cost after year 1 is only $3,230 per year, and you can see this in your packet. This is important and it is needed. As you can see in your packet, we have both researched and conducted a survey at Central. 36% of females at Central have missed school due to the lack of period products, and 41% of females at Central have had difficulty obtaining period products. Period poverty is a proven problem at Central. Some quotes directly from the student population at Central include, "Yes, and I was running around with blood on my pants," and "This should be put in the bathrooms, and from experience, it would make my life so much easier." You can look in the packet for more quotes from students. No one should have to suffer, be embarrassed, or stay home from school because they didn't have the necessary feminine products. Period products are just as essential as the free soap and toilet paper that you provide in all bathrooms. Thank you. Now I will turn it over to my partner, Lucy.
Hello, my name is Lucy Grams. Although I do not attend Central, this is a dire issue that needs to be fixed. Period poverty is not a well-known topic and can be defined as a lack of access to both menstrual products and education. The Period Poverty Project that we have organized is fighting for menstrual equity right here in Columbia, and we can't do it without the funding for these dispensers. 41% of surveyed CHS females have faced or continue to face period poverty. That's almost half. We have received over 1,000 signatures on our petition, with many Columbians agreeing on the necessity of this issue. To paraphrase one signee, menstruation is not something to hide over. Therefore, schools should help young women feel confident as they transition from school to the real world. Another signee expressed that they have signed because all schools should have this. There are young girls who end up getting their period in school and cannot get pads in school because they don't have any. Girls are missing valuable educational time over periods. Please help us with this basic and essential healthcare necessity. Thank you, Board, for your time.
Thank you both very much for coming up and sharing that. I believe this would fall either under Mr. Pointer or Mr. Perriman. If y'all could get together and reach out to them if needed and figure out where we go from here, I'd appreciate it. Thank you both very much for coming up and being here this evening. Our last public delegation, Mr. Pennington, if you would come up and tell us your address, your district if you know it, and then you can start your topic about the capital budget plan.
My name is Trevor Thank you. My name's Trevor Pennington. My address is 1202 Graymere Manor Road. Not sure of my district. I think it is. Good evening, Chairman Fulbright, members of the board. Thank you for your time this evening and the work you do for our students and schools. I'm here tonight after reviewing the agenda to talk about McDowell School. I was shocked to hear of the school's demolition and wondered if there was not an alternative to the demolition. I do not believe that a central office is the best use of a historic location in downtown Columbia. And we believe that a planned community focus-based development that preserves the heritage of McDowell School would be a far better use of the property. We respectfully ask for the board to suspend the demolition and provide us the opportunity to purchase the McDowell campus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can bring that up when we talk about the 5-year plan, bring that up in a little more detail. Moving on, thank you for those of you that shared. Staff reporting. Interim Director Ventura, how about you? Anything?
No, I do not have any.
Any other staff? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent items. Have a motion to approve the consent items from Mr. Moore, seconded by Ms. Kinzer. Any discussion on consent? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Looks like it may be unanimous. But, is there a paper agenda back there? Would you bring me one? I'd just like to have it to take notes on. Yeah, Ms. Kinzer. All right, the consent items pass with no negative votes. We'll move on now to the MOU. Let's see. That's why I like the paper. I just lost it on my computer. MOU between MCPS and Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation. Mr. Ritchie, that has your name tied to it.
Those are all part of consent. That's all part of consent.
Oh, that is included in consent?
Yes, you're down at 7 new business.
Oh, oh yeah, okay.
So we good?
Yeah, you're good. That's what happens when you have too many things.
That's right.
I just was excited to have you come up and talk. All right, new business. Mr. Laconin, Finance.
I know, obviously, you know, under FYI, you can see the financials and all that good stuff. We don't have new business, except I would like to report there are some outstanding items we are waiting on from our salary study contract provider, and we are not going to be able to have payroll numbers for you for Thursday because we don't have it now. This is something that needs to be reviewed in detail, employee by employee. I wouldn't feel good about if I even got it tonight, I wouldn't feel good about turning it around in 24 hours, you all having to make a decision after seeing it for maybe 30 minutes and then having to build a budget. So I would like to ask the board if we could maybe postpone that date to another meeting.
Okay, I see some heads going up and down. This actually brings me to a little bit deeper question is we do need to find out when you think we could be ready and when we want to schedule our budget retreat / meeting. We're kind of running out of Saturdays in April, so if worse comes to worse, we could do 2 extra night meetings, and I don't see it taking anything beyond 2 if we do it right. Do what? Okay. Our Saturday options, because we do have to have this turned or approved by the 30th of April. Which leads us to the Saturdays being the 16th, 23rd, and 30th. 30th being our absolute deadline to do this. 23rd being Easter weekend. 16th is Easter weekend. All right, so the 23rd is still an option then. Okay.
y'all are gonna hate. That is like the only vacation I have this entire year. I'm not in town. Like, it's paid for. I don't want to be that guy. That I'm not even taking a full week. It's just like Thursday and Friday. It's not an excuse. It's been planned, paid for. I can cancel it, but then my dad would be there alone in Crossville, trying to be a family by himself. Sorry.
All right, so then that does sound like if we're wanting to stick with Saturdays, Easter Saturday or the 30th, which is our deadline date. I guess my question then becomes, how does everybody feel about doing it on the Saturday before Easter? I know everybody's got an Easter egg hunt to go to, probably. Well, we would have to do that. We could do also. We have done it immediately after the meeting where we talk about it, so that is always an option. Mr. Laconin.
I'd be happy to attend virtually if you wanted to do the 23rd, and Schiffer will be here, and the numbers will be the same.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that for the 23rd. There's not much we're going to be doing at 6 o'clock at night, so or whatever time we decide to have.
If we're doing it on Saturday, I'm not going to be here at 6 o'clock at night.
Whatever time y'all want to figure it out, yeah.
Mr. Moore.
I'm pretty uncomfortable. I'd like to think we could do this all on a Saturday and be done, and then have a special call afterwards. But I think that's very optimistic. We may need to just look at I would prefer Saturday, but we may need to look at a weeknight a little sooner and get started. I'm just afraid. I don't want to run out of time.
I'm of that opinion myself.
We may hit some hiccups that we're not expecting and have to hash some things out.
Okay. Mr. Lindsay, your light was on.
No, I was just going to say to ask Doug to do that's probably unfair to him. I wouldn't ask him to do that. So, but I'm with Mr. Moore. If we do a night, I would like to start as early as anybody could. That way, if we can bang this thing out in one day, I mean, I don't care if we get here at 4 and stay till 11. It doesn't matter to me. But that's the only comment I have on it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if everybody could. During the day, availability? Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like there's a little bit of promise to that idea. Let's go ahead and pin a date down for those that do need to work. Is April 14th during the day an option? It's a Thursday. Mr. Laconin?
If we get everything, that's the thing, is we're waiting on someone else. So, and I think she is working on it in detail. Lisa's been communicating with me on that. Honestly, if we get everything, what do you think?
Day or so
we could turn it around for next Tuesday if we get it in the next day or so, which is April the 12th.
Well, this would be giving you 2 extra days, so I don't.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, wait a minute. No, is that the week Thursday you're going to be gone?
No,
that's the following, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 12th or the 14th, those would both work.
Yeah, I had suggested the 14th.
Yep.
14th for you, good? Good. Well,
like morning time or after lunch?
Preference from the board? Morning? All right. Will this room be available in the morning?
Absolutely.
During the day? You'll make sure it is?
I will clear out whoever's in here.
Of course. Will, does the school use this during the day for anything?
No, so they might
Okay.
use the gym above us. There might be a little back.
That's fine. Yeah, that's why I was thinking maybe 9:30. 9 o'clock. Okay, so we'll knock it out on Thursday the 14th, starting at 9 o'clock, going until we keep ourselves focused enough to be done with it for the day.
Do you want to call a special call after the work session?
Do we want to call a special call immediately following that Just, maybe at the work session on the 19th? Special called on the 19th. Okay. Ms. Shirley, does all that make sense as far as our planning and scheduling goes? Any other comments, discussions regarding the budget planning process? All right. Is that all for your department, Mr. Laconin? Any other questions for Mr. Laconin? All right, we'll move on then. Instruction. Anything? Okay. Operations. Mr.
Good
Chairman.
evening. The first item we have listed is the capital item request discussion. This is based off of, you have two attachments. One is the 5-year plan you approved in January. The second one is the capital outlay sheet where we have put everything that was on your 5-year plan, plus our request for buses, our request also for maintenance money that we have asked for in the past. I just need to know of these items that are listed here, and it's a total of $159,930, which of those items you would like for me to send to the commission for funding this year. This is your 5-year plan. I am happy to take as few or as many of these items to them as you would want us to. I just need to know which ones you want to take and if there is a specific priority list. Obviously, we have prioritized the elementary school on the north side. That's what we've been talking to you about. The buses are a must that we have to ask for this year. The rest would be kind of the order in which you direct me to request them.
Mr. Laconin, do we have the penny allocation amount at all yet? Okay, thank you.
In yellow on that sheet, Mr. Fulbright, I've made just internal notes kind of based off of what we had thought were priorities, but again, that's just there to show you what we were thinking. In fact, we talked today, we may even think a little bit different than we did when we did this, but not greatly, but this is for you to determine.
Mr. Moore.
I think Mr. Lindsay had his first.
Well, my head was turned that way
All right.
first.
Okay. I guess as we've been talking, Mr. Perrin, about kind of looking at this a little differently and breaking things out, it seems to me that some of the full fundings that we're asking for there would not need to be this year. I mean, maybe you could go into that a little more about, like, what would be necessary to ask for, because we were talking about some projects that may take funding that would be, not completed for 3 years out, and you may not need a third of that money until that third year out. So is there any purpose in asking for it this year? So do you have a kind of a dollar amount that would be current? I can get red here. We've spoken to you in the past, and I've spoken to the chair of the budget committee for the commission about, we as a staff feel that we need to change these projects rather than asking for, and this went kind of bad here, sorry, rather than asking for total amounts on the front end. With the amount of growth that is coming, there may be a plan that needs to be developed for a reoccurring funding. And give you an example, we funded a high school this year. That money will not be completely spent out until 2024. Other districts around us have gone to models to where they know how much would be allotted for that project this year and any other projects that are coming in development or land purchase or anything like that, and they fund primarily a year, come back the next year, and it's an ongoing funding program. And speaking to Mr. Luconin and speaking to Mr. Sumners, I don't know that we're there yet with the commission and how we've asked for monies and how that plan would look going to them so that everybody's on the same page.
So what we've done is just say this is the cost of the total project that's projected, and we could go from there. I will tell you too, Mr. Hall and I have been having quite a bit of discussion about land purchase and planning money, so that we have plans completely done. That way when we do go to the commission and ask for the larger amounts, we have specific amounts. What that does require, though, is that everybody plans a little bit further in advance. If we ask for land money this year and planning money for an elementary school design, then everybody understands we're coming back next year and asking for the money for the building, and that does slow us down compared to the model we've been on, but we may be able to get a tighter number. What happened to us this year could possibly be avoided, with the spike in building costs and how things just out of nowhere went up. We've seen that total cost rise. This would allow us to be a little bit further in advance. So if I spoke specifically to here, the land purchase for any school that we would build on the north side of Columbia is something that we have to consider right away. We would have to identify that, negotiate a price, get that in, and then the money that it would take to design an elementary school, one that we hope could be moved from site to site. That would be kind of our standard, but then also understanding that every site's a little bit different, and so it may require a little bit of changing. Those things would be my top priorities. Obviously, if we're going for a full building, it is still our opinion that we are going to need an elementary school on the north side. Again, I'm going to say north of Bear Creek. Our thought process is west of 31, somewhere up around Carter's Creek area between there and Neapolis is really where we see the need for one coming. If you had to choose a building, that one would be there. Honestly, seeing the maps within the city of Columbia, the Baker site and an elementary school on that side of town, more seating on that side of town is going to hit us pretty quickly as well. Those would be ours if we were asking for full funding. Obviously, the buses have to be there. If you choose to say we're not going to ask for the $4 million in repair money, we can live with that. It wouldn't be ideal, but they've cut that the last few years. But on those would be our top priorities.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lindsay.
Is there a date by which, Doug, that we need this turned into the commission by?
You're going to love it. May 1st. It's got to go to the Financial Management Board April 18th. Or if we don't get it by April 18th, then they'll have to reschedule a Financial Management Board meeting for the 30th to have it approved. The Private Act says Financial Management Board has to approve it this month to have it go by next month.
And that meeting's on the 18th.
So it's just capital. And typically the habit, and Michael's on that board, is that they will rubber stamp that to the Budget Committee, and it can be reviewed at the Budget Committee level. But I have been told by the Budget Committee chairman that they would like to approve their capital on the 18th and review capital the very next day on the 19th.
Mr. Lindsay, I do have a hard date from Mr. Luke Conan to have this in the software by tomorrow. So if you guys can get him to waive on his hard date to me, I'm fine with whatever time period we have. He's kind of been my pressing moment, is that I've got till the end of close tomorrow, he said.
Somebody made a mistake. It turned me on. So I sent this out March 3rd to be done. And I said, hey, March 15th, have it to me. No big deal. Nobody did it. Literally no one did it. All right, somebody did it. Parks was pretty good about it. But then I extended it again. Extended to March 31st. I'm like, surely. And not that surely. But we would get it done. No again. So I extended it again. So I'm not extending it. I'm just not doing it.
Mr. Lindsay, keep going.
I'll just comment and say it appears to me that the whole plan matches our 5-year plan that we've adopted. We can bicker back and forth about the years that Mr. Perriman has put on where we'd want those to fall, but I think it's a good idea to turn the whole list in with our years on it, that's basically our 5-year plan. If they decide to fund it all this year, great. If not, they see what our plan is, what we're projecting. Mr. Perriman can explain all of these. He can explain that, hey, if you want to put 5th grade back in elementary schools, we got to do a $9 million expansion at Mount Pleasant Elementary School. We got, if that's what you want to do, we got to build an elementary school on the north side of Columbia. I mean, I would think it would just be advantageous for us to say, hey guys, here we're laying all of our cards on the table. This is what we need to do. If you can fund it all, fund it all. If you can't, we've prioritized it, and let's start at the top and go till the money runs out.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Irvin.
So in line with you, Mr. Lindsay, I agree that would be very helpful, I think. So I would be a supporter of that as well. Mr. Perriman, my question is, and you'll have to forgive me, I was not able to be at the last Capitol retreat that we had where we spoke of these things, but it was my understanding there was maybe some pushback about the cost of our 2 projects we are trying to lay out now that were approved last year. So my question to you is this: are those still looking to be on track, and are there any additional funds that we would have to request, or would that be separate and apart from this?
Right now, we've got that this thing's going crazy now. We've had that separate and apart. We do go to the Budget Committee next Monday with architects. Mr. Spencer's here. They will be with us. Bell Construction will be with us, and we will do basically the presentation that was done for you guys at the retreat. A little bit of modification because we've had 3 weeks to keep working on the buildings. I will tell you, we've lowered the price of the gym significantly over the last 3 weeks. We are working through the high school. Mr. Hall and I spent all day Friday along with 2 other folks in Nashville, not last Friday, but the Friday before. They are coming to us during the day next Monday. We are working on that cost, and as we get closer to the time to actually get hard numbers on it, we see that falling. We do see that the rising cost in building over the last year is really straining us, and we've made concessions to the program. We've made concessions to the building. We have an alternate plan for the building that we're designing a 2,000 student building. We've got a line of delineation that says this takes us to this point, and this is 1,600 kids, but we've built your core to handle 2,200 because this building could ultimately be expanded to that. And one thing that we did hear from you along the way is that we don't want to run into a scenario like we did with the current Spring Hill High School, where our classrooms can handle kids, but our core can't. So we're designing a building that can be expanded or can be built completely. To do the full 2,000, we need additional funds from the commission. To do the 1,600, we're still working on that, but we're going to present this to them. I had a good talk with Mr. Morrow today, kind of about where things are. They're seeing on the county side the same building cost increase that we're seeing. They understand that we didn't just come to them and lead them astray with a number that now we say it won't work. So we're working through that, but for right now, yes, the plan is that we're going to proceed. We're going to start these projects, and we're going to finish them by the date that we've given you to do that. That right now would be separate. If we go next week and the Budget Committee asks us, can you put this on your capital? Can you bring it back in a different way? Obviously, we would come back to you for your approval and work with Mr. Lukonen to do that. But right now, we're kind of looking at those 2 projects as projects that have begun, and these are future projects.
Thank you, Mr. Perriman.
Mr. Howell.
Mr. Perriman, just to clarify, you have $5 million for future land site purchase. Is that just one land site?
No, and what we were going to talk to you guys about, and we did a little bit when we met back in the fall, and I've spoken to several commissioners as they've called and inquired about different things coming up. What we would like to do, and what we've seen other districts do, is that they fund a line that has this amount of money in there, and it's just for it's for you. If we run across land, if we see something happens, then that money is already there. Obviously, we can't just spend it. It would be your approval, but that money would not require going and asking for funding. That process sometimes can take 2 to 3 months, and in a land or a real estate deal, that's a long time for someone to hold property, especially if it's a large tract. Or we had a house that was sitting next to Highland Park this year that we talked about, that if we had readily available funds, we probably just would have come to you and said, hey, this is just a good purchase. It's right next to us, and it just would have made sense. We didn't want it to be a fund balance request. We didn't want to have to try to do a budget amendment. But we see things like that, not just for future buildings, but things that are smart on your behalf, we could bring to you and then rather quickly move forward. But this is not just one purchase. This is looking for land down the road in many respects, but just making sure that it's available for you guys to be nimble with.
I think Ms. Irvin kind of got to the question I had about why you have separated out, and I trust if that's what you feel like is the best. I'm not sure. It seems, I guess, could go either way on that. But if we're giving them a gross number that's inclusive, it almost makes sense to kind of just include those. I mean, we're definitely going to need those as well. But I trust that if you're going to bring that up in conversations as you present, you may ask to put that on.
That's just based off of conversations that we've had back and forth with with commissioners that have contacted us.
All right. The second would be, do we have kind of and you mentioned this about moving 5th grade back, do we kind of have which one of these projects would need to be funded to meet that need?
If you look at different areas, obviously the Northside Elementary School we think needs to be built just because of numbers.
Okay.
As we see numbers grow. Obviously, you look at the 31 corridor, North Columbia, and then Port Royal, and you see what's happening there. For Columbia to move 5th grade, you need that plus one more.
Okay.
For Mount Pleasant, you need just the addition. If the Northside Elementary School occurs, Spring Hill would be near the capability of doing it. However, I do caution you, I feel like Battle Creek Elementary is going to be at capacity at the end of next year. And if you think about that, that's going to be its 4th year of operation, and I think it's going to be full. So the dynamic of moving 5th grade up there we might have to really be creative in some respects. But the first thing is that Northside Elementary School, one, for just numbers, and then to begin this process. And then either the Baker site or the Culleoka site that we have listed for another elementary school would be necessary.
And I appreciate that, because this is definitely something I think our board needs to weigh very cautiously. If we're going to say that's one of our driving goals of what we want to move towards, and that's fine, but we need to always that needs to be at the forefront of what it's going to take to get there. And I'll go back to when we did the one-to-one program. We kind of said we wanted to do something, and we danced around what it would really cost to get there until 3 or 4 years later. We didn't really look at the whole picture and what it was going to cost. So I would just hope that if this board, in whatever form it is now and as we move ahead, that if that 5th grade being moved is still a driving goal, that we always have to stay on top of what that really is going to take. Because it's, what I see is, $33 million, call it $35 million. The Mount Pleasant addition is another $9 million. And then another addition probably, I think you said at Baker would probably be the next one to get us there. That's a pretty expensive, and that's just part of it. That doesn't even cover, like you said, the growth in Spring Hill that may throw another wrench in that. So
2 things with 5th grade, and we mentioned this to you in the fall. One is it's going to take around 30 to 35 classrooms in Columbia alone to do that. That's a school. That is Battle Creek Elementary. So that's why I'm saying the school that we say we need for growth plus another that would do that in the city of Columbia. The second thing is a big word we've been using over the last 2 weeks is sustainability. Is we can get you in it, but if Columbia builds out, if Mount Pleasant begins to build out, I'm looking at this Mount Pleasant addition today, and I told Mr. Hall, if they build the houses that we're starting to hear about, we're going to have the addition anyway, regardless of whether 5th grade moves back or not. So we have the question with 5th grade of moving back, and then the sustainability of keeping them there. My caution to you guys would be that's beyond you. because your funding body also is gonna have to agree that it is a worthy cause, not only to move them back, but to keep them there. And it's an extra building right now just to move back in the city of Columbia.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Parker?
I would just like to point out, though, that fifth grade got moved out of our elementary school because of a building being built. So if we're going to talk about buildings being built related to fifth grade, again, I think our focus is to be on what is best for kids. We've seen the data. We know what it looks like for our kids that are in fifth grade and the transition year that we struggle with, and what our test scores look like. And so we constantly hear that, and I just feel like this is something that I don't think we really have much choice when it comes down to what is best for kids.
Ms. Kinzer?
I'll be brief, and I just ditto what she says, because you all know I've been preaching this all the time I've been on the school board. But I will say this, at the commission meetings over the past few years, that was a question they asked as well. That was something they supported as well. They see that that's a real need. So I think that it gives us a better impetus to ask for these things when we really have what's best for kids and how to educate them better in mind. So I think definitely we've got to do the North Side Elementary first, and maybe you need to do the Baker project as well, and then Culleoka. I don't know. But I think that what we need to do is just to present our 5-year plan. All of this is involved in that. This is what we're going to need.
And just so y'all know, Mr. Fulbright, I know you know this, they'll fund buses out of 189 that's a reoccurring. That's not necessarily a borrowing. These other items would be probably a borrowing on their behalf. So even within our list, I look at that almost as two separate lists. But I'm happy to present it, and that would be, if it was just I would say take the whole thing. Obviously, I look for you for guidance and just say here it is, and we can talk to them. My only concern is this. We saw last year the willingness to pick and choose. I think we just have to, and I will on your behalf stress that this is your number one, this is your number two. But when we do take the whole thing, I mean, they picked 1 and 4 last year, or 1 and 5, and that's fine. Just know that with the whole thing, sometimes that on their end becomes, well, we're going to pick. I would much rather have a scenario where we say, if we're going to do that, we're asking for X amount of dollars, and we're going to push it this far. They didn't like that conversation last year. But I think that's a trust factor between you guys, us, and them, that if you give us this much, we can build, and we'll build every dollar out. My only caution would be, and again, I would say take the whole thing. My only caution just is for us to remember that they may pick and choose at that point.
Mr. Lindsey?
Now, to piggyback on that, remember in that conversation, legally they can't pick and choose. I mean, they appropriated a dollar amount. That dollar amount was the sum of 2 of the projects we had. But if we really, not saying that we should, but if we really wanted to push the issue, we got handed $74 million, and legally it's ours to do with what we want to do with. But not saying that's good business on our part. But I think present and say, hey, here's how we prioritize this. Here's what it takes to do this. Here's what it takes to do that, and then we'll just roll with it from there. And I don't, Mr. Chairman, if you're looking, if we need a motion, I'm willing to make that on this.
That's what I was going to ask. What do you need from us?
Can I say this? If you're willing for me to present the entire thing, then what I can do is put everything in with a funding year of this year. And then at the work session, and we will not be before the budget committee, before you meet in your May meeting. We could actually in the work session work out an order that you're happy with and vote on it in May. And then when I walk into them, they're all there, and I can say our board has had continuous discussion, and this is your order. So if that's your direction tonight, I don't need a vote, we can put it back on the next work session and actually talk through it at that point.
Okay, then that answers that question. Mr. Howe?
So, which north side elementary schools, North Murray County elementary schools, are full right now?
We believe Battle Creek will be by the end of next year.
We believe, okay. Okay.
Pretty strongly.
Okay.
Marvin Wright grew this year at a faster rate than Battle Creek did.
Okay.
It actually has more seats, though. Spring Hill Elementary would, and this goes back to that domino that we see. Battle Creek feels that they got to go somewhere. They either got to go to Howell or to Marvin Wright. Howell saw our largest increase this year. If they go to Marvin Wright, kids got to go to Spring Hill Elementary and push it south. Riverside has an abnormal amount of growth in its zone right now. So, predicting, as I've said to you in the past, talks about how quickly we build out. The two areas that we see the quickest build out potential, North Columbia and really what has become Hampshire Pike, because we have several apartment complexes that are in the works. We also have the Monsanto Road around the Hicks Lane property that has been hotly discussed and will begin pretty soon. Those would be our two. So we believe by the end of the year next year, Battle Creek will be at capacity. Marvin Wright outgrew them this year. They do have a larger seat count, so that could be a 2-year. But that also depends on how quickly Battle Creek fills and if we say we got to move kids north. Spring Hill Elementary has not grown at the rate that the two of those have, but we do see that cluster up there filling. So Randolph House are our largest growth this year because of zoning. Riverside, for seat capacity, may have the largest per seat growth potential with new homes, and then Battle Creek and Marvin Wright. As we've said to you before, it's a hard thing to determine how quickly they build out.
So what I'm hearing is there's a potential for a lot of growth.
Correct.
And a potential that these schools will be full.
Correct.
Well, I guess this is where I'm stuck at, because Culleoka doesn't have the potential to grow. They're stuck with the school that they have. They're full. Like, you have to go, you can call Penny Love and ask her, which grades are there room? And she can tell you, 4th grade has 3 seats, 5th grade has 6 seats, 9th grade has 8 seats. We're down to the number of seats that we have to house students currently here. Not, well, we project this growth, we think, if Culleoka's not growing, then I guess I'm just seeing mirages of houses popping up all over the place in Culleoka that were never there before. I've lived there just about all of my life. And there are houses popping up there just like anywhere else. Are they large neighborhoods? No. No, they're not. They're houses with 5 acres, 10 acres. And there's not just like, growing up there, it was like, oh, look, so-and-so's, property being sold, and there's another house on it. No, it's so-and-so's 100 acres sold, and there's 50 new houses, or there's 5 new houses, or there's 10, and they're not a developer. It's just Wayne bought some property, and he built them a new house, and Austin did the same thing, and when you're down to counting how many seats there are in specific grade levels that you have available, I think that's a pretty big need. It's not just we think that when these developers decide to build out phase 2, it's going to be bad. Well, it's already bad. Like, we don't there are certain classes that need to be offered at Culleoka, but we're out of closets to put teachers in carts. I say this every year when we talk about capital, and Culleoka just kind of, you just keep stuffing Culleoka down. We can just pack some more in there. We're at capacity.
They had.
And you're going to pull up some numbers, but those numbers don't reflect actual classroom size. You're going to pull Dr. Register's capacity number, and it's 1,100. And guess what? There's no way you can fit 1,100 students into that school unless you totally just cut out half of the classes. So, and they're not like, these aren't like extra classes. There's not a classroom at Culleoka that's like, we just have 8 kids in an English class. No, it's packed full. There's physically nowhere to put children into places.
I agree. They had 63 more kids 4 years ago than they do now.
Yes.
So over the last 5 years, their population has decreased from 5
It has.
years ago.
It has, because there's nowhere to put them.
But that's physical bodies. That's actually that's not Dr. Richards' projections. And we've not said at any point that this wasn't a need. We're just not seeing the growth occur in student body count that we are in other places. Again, if we take the whole list as 22, and you guys talk through this at a work session in 2 weeks and vote on it in a month, what your order is I'm taking and we're selling hard. You know that. Our only priority has been, and I understand what you're saying, and I've walked those halls, but their population has actually regressed, whereas others are growing, and that's why we've said that cluster, the number of houses built, it is impossible to argue that north of Bear Creek isn't growing faster.
I am not saying it's not.
So that is.
But we're building for potential students versus current students. At some point, we have to take care of our current students and not worry. I'm not saying we don't worry about the growth. It's coming.
Right.
It's here. It's happening. But at some point, we have to stop and say, hey, we have these other schools here that have needed updated, have needed repair, have needed stuff, have needed to grow, and you can't grow if you have no room to grow.
Correct. And that's why I say talk about it at the work session and we work through that.
Yeah, that's one thing I just did want to point out. That is actually on the list, and we can talk about that in the prioritization of these projects. Ms. Irvin.
Mr. Perryman, mine's probably going to piggyback on Mr. Housen. I know we need to go on, but I just want to ask, is the reason why Culleoka is not growing, is that because we're continually rezoning them elsewhere? Because the reason why I wonder is because I'm actively every day looking for houses for people. And I've got Culleoka zip code that's going to Mount Pleasant, going here, going there. So, and that's fine because we know the zoning issue, that's ever changing. But my question is this: if we've got kids going from Culleoka to Mount Pleasant to go into Columbia and go into here, I mean, eventually we're shuffling those kids so much that it's going to come to, it's going to have to come to a halt because Mount Pleasant's growing. And eventually Mount Pleasant's not going to be able to take those kids. So I do see Mr. Howe's point. I think the community of Culleoka is growing, whether or not we're putting those kids in that school.
And I agree. Please remember, there are still We Are Cully signs up. Their zone has not changed. So
That's true.
So no one's been zoned out.
Well,
So
okay.
there's not been. If someone's in Culleoka and they're going somewhere else, it's because they choose to.
Okay. Well, no, but it's just because it's been that way. I'm sure.
And that's kind of that. But no, the other thing I would say, as this trend continues, please remember one thing that as we often don't like talking about Williamson County, please remember one thing that they at one point had to do. They basically had to issue a statement that said, do not ever buy a house thinking you're going to go to one school for your entire career. They did that 20 years ago when growth started. We're not to that point yet, but there are areas of our county that if you're buying your home because you want to go to a school, you probably need to buy across the street. And with that said, across the street from Spring Hill Elementary goes to Marvin Wright. So that's a long-term conversation that again can happen at the work session, but my numbers will always just be numbers. I don't have an emotional investment in any of this. I have an emotional investment in one school in this county, and its numbers are going backwards. So that's it. The rest of it's always just going to be a number.
Okay. I don't see any more lights, but I have a couple questions for you. Just kind of bouncing around topics. You had mentioned earlier about borrowing in stages as we complete projects. Would there be any way to put a safeguard in there? Because I could easily see a future commission or future school board having a third of a high school built and not funding the other two-thirds.
I think this year is probably not the year to...
No, not that, not this,
but that's what
in the future.
In the other counties, what they have done is said that basically when you commit to phase one and either dirt starts to move or block starts to go, it is a commitment that this will finish. Now, obviously, as commissions change and things like that, that could work out. That would be part of the details with that, and that's why I say we're not ready for that type of plan yet, that we would have to come to an agreement with Mr. Lukonen, but then also this board would have to come to an agreement with the commission you know, and have something in writing that says, in good faith, this is how we do this.
Did you have something you wanted to say, Mr. Laconin? Okay.
So back to the deadlines, is we do have a financial management board meeting for April the 18th, and that board has to approve something by April 30th to send to the budget committee as a full capital plan for Murray County government and Murray County Public Schools. So that is a meeting that is penciled in, has a notice, and then they were going to go ahead and send that to the budget committee and have the budget committee do the April 19th meeting and take care of that capital right then that night. So that was the plan that's being executed right now by the budget committee chairman. So if we can get something approved tonight, or send it all, whatever you all want to do, then we could have, you know, our capital budgeting process done by April 19th. But the financial management board, if this board needs more time, they could move their meeting to later, and then we'd have to schedule another budget committee meeting. I'm just letting you know the current planned and paid for notices and meetings that are out right now.
Could we do it like Mr. Perriman said, though, where we submit our entire list, and then as we talk through it at our work session, prioritize it and go back and update them on what we prioritized? Not changing the list, but just rearranging the list.
You can change priorities, yes, but if you take anything completely off the list or you add something new to the list, the financial management board would just have to approve it again.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsey.
I'll make a motion to pass this entire list on to the full commission.
I have a motion from Mr. Lindsey. Second by Mr. Sims. I still have one question before we vote. One thing on here, and this gets back to something that was mentioned earlier, could you provide a little bit of a description on where we are with McDowell, because central office is on here, and that's identified in going in that spot. But I want to have just a little bit of an update on where we are with that and where we could go with that.
They began asbestos abatement yesterday.
Okay.
So we are 2 weeks from, and actually when we spoke to the job foreman for Bell Construction today, he feels like that the way they are abating the asbestos, there is a firewall, a delineation wall from where they are now to where they would be in the next few days. He feels like that it may even be quicker than 2 to 3 weeks that thing could come down, begin coming down in the next week to week and a half, depending on how quickly they are there. They have begun asbestos abatement. We do have a contract that that is for the complete asbestos abatement that has begun, and we have a demolition contract that is set to begin. They will put a fence up around that by the end of the week was the goal when I talked to them today. So those two contracts have both been assigned, and we are actively taking that building down.
All right, I know we're way far down the road. I understand that. We've got contracts signed. My concern is that when we initially put this out for bid, there was a lot of confusion and misinformation that got out. And now we have people who are saying, we want this building, potentially. And I know potentially is the hang-up word there, but there still is an effort to want something else to happen beyond it being torn down. And we've heard that from the community outcries. We've heard that from community leaders. And that's where I would, and I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack and you're going to throw probably that water bottle at me, but I would like to see us pump the brakes just a little bit to see if the folks that are truly interested are still interested after they have a chance to look at it. And then I understand we would have to put it out for bid, but I want to at least put that out there to say that that's what I would feel more comfortable with, simply because there is such an interest in seeing something remain there rather than just a bare lot. So, I mean, you can tell me why I'm wrong, but I'm just telling you the concern I have as far as voting for something with that still on there.
My feeling on this is that we put this out for bid last year. We ended up having to redo the bid in the middle, if you remember, and extended it. It basically was out for bid for 6 weeks. We had no bids. We had 2 people call immediately following and say, I would have bought it, but and then they said, now can I buy it? Well, it has to go back through that process. We are approaching, by the time our plan would be by the time it's down a year for it to have been empty from basically last May 23rd. We've disconnected every utility from it. They've started abating it. We have walked this building with multiple potential buyers. Only one said, we think we might want to keep it. And if you remember, this building was deemed worthless by the appraiser. The site was priced to you by per square foot of ground, and the building was actually a detriment to the site. My fear would be, we're already in the building beginning demolition. We are, in my opinion alone, that horse left the barn months ago. If we put this out for bid, we bid it for 4 weeks, we could be right back where we are with increased demolition costs, a building that is partially asbestos abated, which at that point I'm gonna have to seal, and I can't keep people out of it. I've been the bad guy on the McDowell property all along. The building's worthless, regardless of what anybody says.
Let me just ask you a scenario, and this is the only last case scenario that I can think of. Would it even be possible, and Mr. Laconin can answer this too, you said that there's I'm not going to hold you to it, roughly a 2-week window before the wrecking ball would come in and start knocking things down. You're looking at me
That's
confused.
the plan, was 2 weeks to abate the asbestos.
Could we put out a bid for 2 weeks, starting tomorrow?
I really don't know. I don't
Who
think
would
we,
know?
I don't think we
I
could.
thought you knew everything.
I couldn't. I don't think we could turn it around that fast.
This is part of that vote, simply because this is on the list of things we're getting ready to approve or not approve.
It may take a day or two, but we could probably get something out the door.
All right, proceed. Mr. Howell, go ahead.
So, I love old things. I love old houses. I love old buildings. I like the preservation of that. At some point, though, you have to realize that something is just not worth salvaging. I believe the appraisal came in at $2 million. Hold on. But I believe there was a subtraction of that because there's this big blight on it, and it was called McDowell School. It was called the building itself, that took away from that value, and it was less than $1 million. Is what the value was, which I honestly don't know where you can find. I think it's 15 acres, 7 acres, 7 acres in the middle of downtown. I thought $900,000 was dirt cheap. I don't know that we can replace that. In fact, I know we can't replace that. So as a building, as a lot to put, it won't house a school. It's just not enough room there to house a school. We've been over that. We've hashed that out. We fought that battle. We're moving on. So somebody came up with this great idea to put central office there, and I do think it's a great idea. It still keeps central office central to the whole county. It's not north, it's not south, it's pretty central. It's in downtown Columbia. How long it sits vacant is dependent upon us and really the county commission to fund that project, right? So, if we get community support behind it, it won't be vacant long, right? That would be the goal. But we've been through this process. We've tried to bid it out. We did what we could. At this point, it's kind of a day late, a dollar short. I do remember specifically people contacting us afterwards and saying, "Hey, I would have bought it, but, well, then why didn't you bid? You could have bid a dollar." We had a minimum. We did have a minimum, but you didn't. There was no bidding, So I don't know. We're kind of beyond the point. We've moved on. We have a 5-year plan. It includes a central office on that site. I'm not sure what else there is left for discussion. I don't see us being able to put the brakes on and all of a sudden somebody come in and you know, swoop in and buy it for $2 million or whatever they decide. I think we're beyond that at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna make propose an amendment that we approve, like Mr. Lindsay said, approve this list and send it on to the county commission with the amendment that we allow for bids for the McDowell property as soon as possible, lasting 2 weeks. That's my amendment. Is there a second? There's no second. So we'll go back to the original motion. Sir.
If you look at the 5-year plan, it says Maury County Public Schools Central Office, new office, meeting, and training space to be constructed on a site to be determined. The West 7th site of current McDowell is recommended. I just want to say to you guys that our recommendation as a staff was that's where it is. That doesn't change my feeling on this process, but we never locked anyone into that site. And again, even in what you approved, it just says is recommended. That's a staff recommendation. So no matter what you determined, there was never a hardcore, this is what you have to do on that site. I just want to clarify that we didn't dictate or try to push that on you to say this is what you have to do with that site. I still feel we're too far along the process, but I just want to clarify, we never said that's what you have to do there.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, I know my amendment failed, but I am going to go on record as saying I think that we went with bad information on the front end. Bad information was put out on the front end, the first couple bid processes, and we let that slide without seriously taking up an effort to correct that until it was brought to our attention that there was more interest than we realized. So with that being said, I'll go to the next light, Ms. Parker.
I just want to clarify, my understanding when we talked about demolition was that we didn't get any bids the last time we put this out there because the building was there. And if we took the building down, then we could then put it back out for bid. So I personally don't feel like we've ever agreed that central office is going on the McDowell property. And personally, I think we need to take it out, and then I think we need to put it out for bid. And if we get a bid for it then that makes it worth our while to sell it, then we can sell it. If it is not worth our while, we can talk about a central office. But I don't think anything is finalized on any of that. I think taking this building out helps us potentially be able to sell this property. I would hope. I've seen the houses that Mr. Pennington's done. In all honesty, I envision those houses being on the McDowell property. Like that's always been in the back of my mind that something like that would fit there. But if he has to work around a big, huge school, then I don't blame him for not bidding on it the last time, especially with some of the misinformation that was put out there, because people didn't know whether or not they could take that building down or if it was on a historic register, or all those issues. We avoided that because we're a government entity and we can take it down, period. And we can sell it again if we want to.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
I just, on the motion that is to approve the entire list, I guess my concern is still that the current projects that are in process that are underfunded, the new high school as well as the gym at Santa Fe, just that still concerns me if those dollar figures are elsewhere. That would be my only holdup on this. This list as presented, that's my concern there, because I feel like that should be included in a capital request of some kind.
Okay, Ms. Kinzer.
I'm just a little confused because I don't see anywhere on this list that it says, and we've already voted on the demolition, that ship has sailed.
Well, the amendment failed, so that's off the table.
I don't know what failed because it's nowhere on there does it say we can't put it out for bid once the demolition is done. So I don't know what all this discussion is. We have voted for the demolition. We still own the property. Once it's demolished, then we can choose to put it up. But I don't know where, anywhere on this list, it would preclude us from doing that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
Just, if I can comment on Mr. Moore's comment, some people's gonna cringe when I say this, but we haven't a GMP's not been approved by this board. So as of right now, and this is where the cringing's gonna start, I'm expecting these two projects to come in at $74 million. So I mean, as of today, we don't need any extra money, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Irvin.
Well, again, I wasn't here, but if that means something's getting cut that we previously discussed, then I've got a big problem with that. So that needs to be clarified too. That makes me want to do like Mr. Moore and make sure that that's included on this capital request.
Two things to that. One, let me clarify one last thing, and then I'm done with this. Please know, and just for everybody to know, the misinformation on that property did not come from anyone in this room.
No, I totally understand where it came from.
I just want everybody to be understood. Nobody in this room gave any misinformation at any point on anything that's happened at West 7th. It was different. Two things. One, we did not include this because, and we talked about it, you approved this plan in January. That's the first thing. I've not brought anything to you that would be abnormal. The $4 million for maintenance is something that we've discussed for 2 to 3 years. We bring buses every year. I do not feel it's my place to take the liberty to just say to you something other than you've discussed and approved before. Here's a plan, and I think you should put this on there. That's the first thing. Second thing, in conversation through budget chair, through the chair, the conversation they've had with us is bring it to us at budget, let us see where you are, and then we'll engage you with discussion at that point. Not to speak for them, my understanding at that point, if we present to them Monday night and they say, wait a minute, this is a legitimate need, we're experiencing the same thing, we just didn't build a clerk's office or a drive-through because it was too high, we're seeing this at the Herald building, we get where you are, that would be an engaging conversation, which at some point, what they've done in the past is say, please bring us a number back. So I didn't feel that as staff, it's mine to take liberty to say, oh, by the way, I just added this to your capital plan without talking to y'all. That's the first thing. I'll never do that. The second thing is, through conversation with them, my understanding was, bring it, let us see it, and then we're going to talk to you about it. Right, wrong. If you feel that there's I can give you a number that I would ask for, but I can't, I'll do that if you ask me, but I'm not just going to say, oh, by the way.
Okay.
Chicken or the egg, which one comes first?
Depends on whether you're in Cornersville or Santa Fe.
Well, what I mean by that is, would it be where we ask for this, they approve our future funding, you see what I'm saying, and then we don't get the funding for the other things?
Correct.
That's where my fear comes in. And I understand we have not put it out for bid, and I understand that we don't have a solid number, but perhaps maybe we should put an asterisk at the top, potential need for additional funds for the prior request, or some official wording. I would feel much better with that.
If you felt that we needed to include this tonight, I'm going to give you a round number. I'm going to give you a high number. I haven't even looked at Mr. Spencer. He may smile, roll his eyes, or fall out of his chair. I'm going to give you a high number that I would say this would be the moon and stars, $20 million. Do I think we need $20 million? No. But if I were going to put an ask on and say asterisk potential, I would ask for that, and then through conversation after the presentation and after dialogue with them as to where we are, what's this, then I would say to them, where are you? Because I think that's their expectation, is to show us where you are and we're going to talk to you about it. But if you have a concern, and it's a legitimate concern, that they come back and say, well, you didn't even put this on your 5-year plan, we could include that number with the asterisk, possible. I don't think we need that number, but if I'm asking, I'm going to ask high. and then work backwards to it. But again, that's for y'all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Irvin?
Did he roll his eyes or did he smile?
I didn't even check.
He jumped out the window.
So I would feel more comfortable with that. I feel like it's just being transparent. It may be overkill, but I feel like it's being transparent. So do we need a motion to add that? If so, I can come up with a motion.
It would be an amendment, yeah.
Okay, so I will, and I know Mr. Moore hates this, but on the fly, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to include some type of notation, an asterisk notation, to reference the previously approved projects at Spring Hill High School, at Battle Creek High School and at Santa Fe Gym for up to approximate amount of $20 million.
Okay. Have a motion? Have a second by Ms. Kinzer. Mr. Lindsay?
I don't want anybody to take my comment out of context. My full expectation is we're going to build a 2,000 student high school and a gym at Santa Fe for $74 million. Because that's what we got told. Now, there's a lot of cringing going on right now. But that's my expectation. That was what we were told we could do. And I'm going to get on my soapbox again, but I have no intentions of cutting any project. I have no intention of cutting any scope of project. I have no intention of building anything less than a 2,000 student school. Just don't. That's what we were told. That's what we were told. That's what this board told the commission we could do. If we missed it by $20 million, if we missed it by 30%, I'll stop. But I have zero intention of cutting anything.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Howe?
I agree with you, Mr. Lindsay, but that also took into, we were assuming we could use the entire athletic facility that was currently at Battle Creek, because that's what we were sold on with Battle Creek was, hey, we got this, we're laying the groundwork for this. It can be, just a little bit more, and we can add some more bleachers, and it can be a high school. Well, we found out that no, that's not the case. So, at some point, that savings right there, we've lost that. We don't have that anymore. So, I do have concerns that we can do this for $74 million. A 30% increase, that's a lot. So, and I understand, before you get on there, I understand the cost of materials has skyrocketed, the cost of labor has skyrocketed, the cost of fuel has skyrocketed. But, we were sold different things at different points, and that's not necessarily anybody's fault but our own, really. That's we need to take onus of that. But we do have, there are other sources that we can fund this with. If we need, if we come short on one of these projects, I'm not saying we got $20 million laying around, but we do have a fund balance with a little bit of money, and that's kind of what it is. It's for rainy days. It's for savings. That's what you have a savings account for, is when you come short on something, sometimes you have to do something. That's not what we use our fund balance for traditionally. We've used it to do other things that we don't get money for. But I don't know. I feel like this is going to be an extremely hard sell to the county commission, because they're going to point back and say, well, why are you building this Taj Mahal, is what's going to be thrown out there. Why are you building this whole new athletic field when you already have athletic fields that we told them the same thing we were told. Oh, no, they've already got part of this there. So you're already going at an uphill slope, and now we're going to tack on $20 more million. It's kind of hard to go vertical up a hill. So,
thank you very much. Ms. Irvin?
So the reason why I feel that is a safeguard, I don't want to spend $94 million on these projects either. That is not my intention. And that is where I feel like we as a board are going to have to hold different sources accountable, and we're going to have to be wise in our formation of that and make sure we're not building a Taj Mahal. But with that said, if we ask for it, we have it. And as Mr. Lindsay pointed out earlier, to my understanding, once those funds are in our capital, they're in our capital. And then if we don't spend 20, if we spend 10, then we've got 10 to spend on something else. It'll be am I wrong?
You're not, and just know, I give y'all good enough quotes without help. I said pie in the sky, we will never spend, but if I had to give you a number on the fly, I have no intention of building anything on these two for $94 million. But if you tell me tonight I need a number that's going to be a by the fly on the cuff number, I'm going to give you a high number. So again, I give you good enough material without embellishing it. That's the number I gave you, but please know that's a high number, and that would be the complete safeguard. I could give you a lower number and go ask for it, and they would maybe whittle that down. I don't know.
We're ready then to vote on the amendment that's been presented. That is to include notation on this list to include up to $20 million to cover increased cost of construction on current projects. And we will be voting just on the amendment part of adding that $20 million. Up to $20 million. I would take the first part out because we're not technically voting on the list now. We're just voting on adding. That's what I'm saying. We need to vote on whether or not to add the item before we vote on the list.
Maybe it would be just motion to approve an asterisk notation at the top of the list, because I see your hesitation's the entire capital item.
Yeah, because I'm not voting for that, but I may vote for the. Okay, so this takes care of both motions in one. If this, okay, all right, I got you. If, as written, passes.
I made the motion.
Yeah.
So let me stop right here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't want to do this as a 2-for-1. I want this to be to put this asterisk at the top of that list.
Okay, so this is just for the addition
yes,
to the list.
And maybe I'm overthinking it, but then, because then we can tweak the
Well, that's
other.
what I thought we were doing anyway.
I don't know.
We are voting to
Yes.
amend the list
To amend
with
the
an
list.
addition of up to $20 million.
Correct.
So, yes, and I don't see any more discussion after
Okay.
this, so.
Thank you.
I think we've discussed quite a bit on it. All right, this is for the amendment. And we're ready to vote once you feel comfortable with the wording. I would just end that whole phrase with to cover increased construction costs. To cover increased construction costs. Not that that probably matters, but all right, that looks good to me. Yeah, Miss Kinzer keeps her second, begrudgingly, but thankfully nonetheless. All right, we are voting on the amendment to add this increase. Just the amendment. That does not pass. So now we will be voting on the list as presented. I don't see any discussion, so we're ready to vote. The list as presented. All right, your list passed. You get to run to the county commission with it, or the financial management team first. So I'll get to see you again next Tuesday, or whenever. Yeah, fun times. All right. Okay. Then we'll move on, operations low bid.
The next two bids that are on here, are through food services. Mr. Parkhurst put these both out to bid at Spring Hill High School. This is a new cooler, walk-in freezer, and the serving line. We have had these two projects on delay because of the pandemic, because of, delivery times on some of these items, but we did bid them. You see there the low bid for both. He has the funds in his fund balance in 143, and he's just asking you to allow him to use those to do this.
Okay. Motion from Ms. Parker, second from Mr. Moore to approve both of these. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Ms. Parker and Ms. Kinzer. No, wait a minute. Yeah, Ms. Parker and Mr. Moore. Anybody on that end, take your pick. All right, that passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our business. I would just like to review that we will be not having our meeting on Thursday. We will instead have it the 14th on a Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning here in this building. Ms. Kinzer.
I spoke with Ms. Gerard, before the meeting about, you all have received all the applications and all, and so, she suggested that we review them completely and then pick 5 candidates, if you all think that's all right, and then get them to you. What was the date you would like for that to be?
So we can have them at the next, at the work session.
Okay.
We had them the Thursday before, because we're off the 14th.
The 14th, okay.
So have them sent to you by email or?
By end of day on the 14th.
Yeah, by email, by Al, by.
You gotta give us specific.
Carrier pigeon, smoke signals. All right. Mr. Lindsay.
But just to clarify, make sure we're all on the same page. I think what you was talking about, we'll turn in 5 names, she'll tally, and that'll give us 5 finalists that go to the next step, if everybody's okay with that number of 5.
I think, and we can discuss this more, but I think we need to leave ourselves open. If 3 separate themselves totally, that may influence kind of the way we go forward.
We're gonna say a maximum of 5, and then
okay. Yeah, I'm sorry I complicated it. 5 names to you, you'll tally them, and we'll meet to talk about it.
Yeah, and then I can just give you the list, and if you wanna use the top 6 instead of the top 5.
Okay. Sounds good to me. All right, if there's no other business, we are adjourned.